Hi, my name is Molly Scott. You're listening to Her Life, Her Style, Her Sport. From a very early age, I knew what I wanted to do. I remember I watched the Olympics. I watched Shelly-Ann Fraser run in 2008. Must have been only 9. My mom called me inside to watch the race, and I just was like, that's what I want to do. It's actually been a really crazy year. I finished, obviously, my final year was through the pandemic. I kind of knew during the summertime that I wasn't going to make Tokyo and that I wasn't anywhere near the qualification. So I decided to do the King's Inn exams at the end of August. So when I competed at the European Under-23s in Tallinn in the middle of July, I just came home, studied all summer, and made a plan that I would definitely wanted a breakthrough year. I also passed the exams, luckily, so I got to start King's Inn in September, and I'm doing the course part-time. Balancing both has been interesting. I find sometimes one gets a little more time and effort than the other, but you kind of have to, work around that. Breaking the national record when I did break them, it meant a lot to me because it was that's what me and my mom did, solely together, on our own. We ran a time, we're running times that are as good as other girls in Europe and other girls in the world. So for it to all come together, and from the work that we put in from age 10 and 11, sometimes my mom has to act differently. Sometimes when we go into a season, we'll say, okay, well, for the next 6 weeks, I'm your coach, I'm not your mother, and you're my athlete. And that's the sacrifice that we have to do to make it work, because there's not 10 other national sprints coaches there with the same expertise as my mother. So it's just the decision that we decided to make. But as I've gotten older, I've realized that the reason I love doing athletics is because I get to do it with my mom, and because we get to do it together as a team and create something special for each other. But even my mom, when I was a kid, when I was 12, she brought me to a race in Scotland, and I think it was in Kelvin Hall, and she just pushed me to run against British girls, because she was like, if you're not up there with them, what's the point? But so I competed against British girls and athletes my whole since I was 12, 13, and the experience I got, I think, was it was so worthwhile, because when I got to a bigger European and world stage, it just became the norm for me. When I first broke the record, I wasn't really expecting to do that. I wanted to run just underneath 7:30. That's what I was expecting from training, and then to run 7:23, it meant so much to me, and it felt at the time, at the beginning of the season, such an incredibly fast time. I've said this before, I had painted 7:19 on the back of my phone in gold at the very beginning of January, before even the season had began. That was the time that I wanted to run. The target will definitely be Paris. I'll be 25 then, so that's the perfect age. Tokyo for both my mom and me, we just knew it was just that little bit out of reach, but I feel I'm 2 or 3 years behind on some people, again, because I wasn't doing the same training as other people. I might be a bit of a late bloomer in regards to sprinting and doing the actual work that I need to do, and that I understand what I need to do. When you're doing a sport at the same time, it can be taken away from you the next day. So I think it's really important to have other passions, other hobbies outside of the sport you do. Banking everything on a sport is not always the best idea, and it's definitely not my sport the most lucrative either. Yeah, I said before that giving up is so cliched, I guess. Yeah, I did fail my first ever assignment, and I think I got 12% or something like this, and I was distraught. I was like, this isn't for me. I was 6 weeks into my course, and I really wanted to quit. But I remember I was standing at the photocopier, and I was almost in tears, and this woman was like, are you okay? And I started talking to her. And then it turns out she was a final year law student, and she gave me loads of advice, and she gave me loads of help, and was like, no, keep going, it's gonna work out, you're gonna be fine. And by the time I got to final year, then I was almost hitting the 70s, so I went from failing and getting 12 and 30% to sticking at it. And then with athletics, I've asked people this question before. I was like, have you ever thought about quitting? And some people say no. And I was like, yeah, of course I've thought about quitting a couple of times. Sometimes when you're sitting in an airport in the middle of Eastern Europe somewhere on your own, and you ran 11:90 in the 100, and you're just questioning your whole life, and that it's not worth it. But then the highs and the lows of it are also what makes it worth it. We have this long glass table in our house. It's probably about 1.5 meters, maybe 2 meters, and me and my mom are always like, that's the gap between me and Mary Beth St. Price or Mika Briscoe that won, like that's 7-0 and then there's 7-20. You know, that's it. It's the length of the table in your kitchen. But what does it take to close that gap? Like, what does it take? It takes an awful lot of time and effort and sacrifice. It always seemed like a shameful thing when I was younger for my parents to push me, or for my parents wanting to be good at something. In Ireland, you kind of have this, like, you know, the whole, like, the begrudgedness of, like, success and stuff like that. Like, you only have to go to your local sports club or something like that and you can find out pretty soon, you know, a story like that. So when I was a kid, it was often, you know, had comments like, you know, you should go home and play with your dollies, like you shouldn't have your kid training at the track. And my parents almost had to, like, you know, do me and my mom do our own training. I found that, like, sometimes in girls' sports, you know, like, the wrong narratives can surround it, like being exceptionally competitive in sport within women can be misplaced as, like, maybe bitchiness or stuff like that, whereas men can be, you know, as competitive as they want to be. But then when it's women being competitive, it's like, oh, it's they're being bitchy or they're being that, whereas they're not really, like, able to be unapologetically just competitive. Like, there's always this, like, negative narrative that surrounds it. So that can be difficult. But I find with, like, athletics and being a woman, that doing sprinting and stuff like that is one of the only ways that I can really express myself. Like, I can be aggressive, I can be whatever I want to be, and I can express that through, like, sprinting. If I hadn't done athletics, I don't know where I would have ended up. I think I would have had a very different life. But I still deal with, like, you know, comments that can be quite condescending. But I just, you know, I just channel that into my training and prove people wrong. Hi, my name is Molly Scott. You're listening to Her Life, Her Style, Her Sport.